Back at it again. The Haiti Daily Economic News Show, Monday to Friday, bringing you news to keep you informed, engaged, and reacting in the most optimal way for your business, investment, and entrepreneurial needs. Let's get into it. So today's article is real interesting. It's about what I've been seeing just going outside in the city, right? A lack of rain. There's been a serious, real issue with the droughts this year, and so just so you guys know, the dry season is from around November and stretches to about March. And that's every year, no matter what. But it's been particularly bad this year in the provinces where it really matters the most, because you have folks dependent on that water rainfall to feed themselves and to make ends meet, right, for their kids' schooling and other expenses. And we've had as little as perhaps 3, 4, 5 minor rainfalls in the entirety of 3-4 months, right? That's 30 by 4. That's 120, 90-ish, 120-ish days of very little, very minimal rainfall, and that's a problem. You have, and this is not the first year. We have last year, 2018, was pretty rough as well, until the rainy season finally did kick in later than usual. And the year before that, it was pretty bad, but we had at least Hurricane Matthew and the rainfall that came because of that to help sustain that drought and alleviate that drought. But we don't have that. It's still a very raw, devastating drought that's occurring in Haiti, and folks are struggling to react and struggling to figure out what to do. I mean, we're talking about figures. It hasn't been this bad since 1944, and no one's talking about it. That's what's interesting to me. No one is talking about it. Of course, there's been some other bigger things on the news between big protests and Navy SEAL, U.S. Navy SEALs, being found with caches of weapons. So there's been bigger news in Haiti, but certainly one of the very critical news I feel that's not being engaged and talked about is this. Now, there's certainly some things that could be done, right, to isolate ourselves from this, and some of the factors, of course, are many-fold, but the biggest factor is El Nino, the El Nino effect. That's really just throwing off a lot of things, in addition to just general global climate change. But there's some things we could do that could be done at the national level to help isolate these things, including creating in every particular important commune where farming is a very big aspect of the economic life there, building very large reserves that folks can tap into and are properly regulated. Secondly, we can restructure the contact point between farmers, entrepreneurs, and financing, right? That sweet spot right there, there could be things done, a lot of things done from a legal environment perspective to help foster and facilitate that environment. And further, of course, you never go wrong with training. Every dollar you spend in training farmers and providing information on their hands, particularly when it comes to sustainability and drought protection, is a dollar that's going to return back to you themselves with other dollars associated with it, right? And we're not seeing those sort of activities. All three things do require a government that is engaged in improving the quality of life for its citizens and not itself. We're not seeing that yet in Haiti, but at some point, hopefully we will. And certainly these are some of the things that could be done, right? Now, you who's in the agricultural field, I know a lot of folks who are abroad who want to get into that space. I know a lot of folks who are currently in that space. And so how are you guys dealing with that? How do you deal with that, right? And so what we're seeing folks do, as always, and you see that in the city with, for example, what I have with how to deal with electricity and internet and stuff like that. Folks generally have safeguards on their property, right? And you're seeing folks I was just visiting a farm a few months ago, and one of the things I know that they do is, they find whales, water reserves on their land, and they sort of let that water just gush out until it's a sort of small lake. Lake probably is I'm being a little too generous, but it's a very large amount of water that just sits at the surface, and that provides this degree of insulation. So that's something I know folks do and you could do. Secondly is the type of agriculture that you're planting, right? There's crops that are more dependent on water versus less. And rice is one of those things that that needs a lot of water to sustain itself, while there's others that are considerably less water dependent. In periods like this, particularly if you don't have the local infrastructure to really add and compile water reserves on your property, maybe perhaps you don't have much water reserves or water tables on your land, that might be the way you may have to deal with it. Third is simply those two things, but within your community, right? However you can help foster that sort of collective within your area. I know group protections are always multiplied and always exponentially better in improving your individual position than just improving your individual position by itself. And of course, that usually requires you to be a lot more engaged in that community, in that area. As I've said many times before, Haiti's a jealous mistress. She wants a lot of attention, and so you really need to consider being there, or at least traveling considerably to be a part of that collective action that you're doing to help improve your stock by improving the stock of the other agricultural players in your area, right? So that is the news story for today. If you liked what we're doing here, if you liked how we're trying to keep folks engaged, trying to have conversations around real important topics, real important news stories that's affecting real Haitians, real entrepreneurs, real investors, here's what you need to do. You need to hit that like, right? You need to hit that subscription, right? You need to hit that share button, okay? And then you need to tune in next week when we talk about some more stuff, right? Right? Am I hearing it right? I'm hearing it right. Until we're back at it again, we'll be back at it again.